Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Theme Accelerator check in session. Thanks for tuning in today, wherever you are. It's great to be with you today. Big shout out to everyone in the chat as well. Please join in and start chatting, and you can add in your questions there as well. So, in this session, we're going to be answering your questions and giving guidance on the theme review process. But first up, I wanted to just give a huge thanks to everyone who is a part of our first Theme Accelerator program. Whether you are active in our Slack channel or connecting with us one on one, or just reading our updates and following along with our content, just wanted to say huge thanks for participating in the first program of its type so far. And we're really looking forward to helping you build a theme for the Shopify Theme Store. Even if you haven't reached the point where you're ready to submit, we still want to support you on this journey into 2022. Of course, this year was a huge time for themes with the launch of Online Store 2.0, but I believe 2022 is going to be the year of themes, and we couldn't be more excited to help you launch your theme into our marketplace. So, a huge thank you to everyone who submitted a question today. You can still submit questions through the Slido form, and that was on the splash page, and we'll be getting through as many of those as we can today. Just before we get started as well, we'll just do a quick intro around the table with each of the people here today. I'll start off. My name is Liam Griffin. I'm a developer evangelist here at Shopify. Over the past couple of years, I've created a lot of technical content for theme developers looking to learn about Liquid, how to build on our platform, and I'm currently working on expanding the educational resources that are available to help developers like yourselves build themes. So I'll throw it over to Marcus.
Hi, everyone. Liam, thanks for the intro. Great to be here again. So Marcus from Team Partnerships. Delighted to be here to answer any questions we can on the Accelerator program. And just great to see the attendance and the momentum that this has been gathering over the last number of weeks.
Great. I'll take it on next. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Vince Dobson, Theme Partner Manager here at Shopify. We're happy to have you here and answer any of your questions. And I'll pass it on to Ryan.
I guess that leaves me. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan McInnes. I am the lead of Theme Quality and Trust with Marketplace Operations here at Shopify. It's a pleasure to work with you for the ones that have already submitted and for the ones who are intent on doing so in the new year. We're looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So we have definitely an all-star cast that crosses over from review to partnerships to marketing as well. And, again, huge shout out to people in the chat, Brenda, Dominic, Kate. Great to have all of you here with us and from all parts of the world as well. So thanks so much. With that, I'm going to jump into the first question that was submitted by Mutu. And Mutu asks, for the newcomers to the theme store, what will be the approximate number of support tickets per day per theme? Marcus, do you want to?
I can jump on this one. I mean, there's no standard that we could say, listen, your theme is going to have X number of support tickets based on X number of sales. There's a couple of different ways in looking at this. I mean, if you're getting support tickets in, obviously you're making sales. That's a good thing. Support tickets, again, I know I've said it before, is that, let's take the negative connotation away from there, that there's a support data, that they're heavy, a huge amount of merchant feedback, an awful lot of merchant requests, ways to improve your theme, bugs that might have popped up that you might not have caught in your QAing and testing processes. It's a great way of actually making sure that your theme is in the best possible condition it can be. What I will say is, if you've got really good support documentation that's going with your theme, that's going to lighten any amount of support that you get, because merchants can self-serve, or there'll be information there for them to help. But then also, when you're thinking about building your theme, make sure that you are keeping in mind the setup process and the experience for the merchant, because the better and more robust you make that, the fewer support requests that you're going to get in as a result of it. So, listen, I'm not going to say that huge sales equals huge support tickets. It can be completely the opposite. In fact, I mean, some of the larger theme partners we have, because of the amount of work that put into the QA, testing, development, planning, that has meant that there's been very few support tickets relating to those type of items, and generally it tends to be like feature requests or maybe some particular item that might have been a bug in some particular browser that they might not have picked up. So yeah, look at it as a positive. If you're making sales, you will get them. To start off with, if you end up getting a huge amount of support coming in, that's great. You're making possibly a large amount of sales. You might be able to take somebody else on to help you with that. I know it's a bit of a vague answer, but there really isn't anything that you could give as a solid figure.
Maybe just adding on to that, along with preparing documentation, what else can people prepare? What kind of maybe tools can people use that would help them when they're starting off with support?
Yeah, I mean with an awful lot of products, like obviously apps, themes is what we can speak to here. Reviews are going to be important to a theme on the theme store. So by having a good support system, and by being there to ensure that you're able to like get to the merchants quickly, answer their questions, and help them through support and getting set up, obviously that's going to end up with good reviews. Having some form of a decent emailing ticketing system can help. I mean, you don't need to look into something massively expensive like Zendesk or anything like that, but it just making sure that you have got some form of a structured flow for taking these tickets in and dealing with them in within a reasonable time frame. I mean, we do expect that if we can see a turnaround within 48 hours on a ticket, that was generally what we would accept as a really good merchant focused support queue.
And something else I've just heard anecdotally from other theme developers that really helped them with support was when there's quieter times, like going back on previous support tickets and seeing what were those frequently asked questions, and then being able to have whether you're using a tool like Text Expander or some snippet text like generator, where you're able to just quickly have access to a response, can also be helpful in that situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can even take it a step further where you can find that if there is something that, perhaps is a feature there that can be enhanced, or like you do want to avoid a huge amount of complexity, but if you feel there is something there that merchants really need a little bit of assistance in getting the most out of, perhaps create a tutorial video, have that on your support page as well, because as we know, some people prefer to absorb information through videos rather than having to trawl through documentation. So that's another.
Just to touch on that, I want to double down on what Marcus said. So Marcus, right now we're managing the partnerships we have internally already at Shopify, and one of the biggest, one of the best ways that they've said is through video. So through video in the documentation and having setup videos, videos about a feature that they have in the theme and how to best set it up and things to think about. And I think those have been really effective based off the feedback I've gotten from my theme partners. So just doubling down on that. Documentation is very key.
Sure.
You can build really, it, of course. Yeah.
Really, really good points. We have another question here from Mutu again. A technical question. Can we use meta fields for storing translated content like product titles, descriptions, variants, data, and also when will the collections meta fields be released? So I was actually in touch with the Metafields team today, and they said, yeah, you can use Metafields in this way to create individual translations for on products, on variants. However, it's not really the way that metafields were designed to work. You would need to write logic and create logic that would surface the correct translation to the right users. So they actually advise looking into the translations API, which is available on the online store. So I'm going to just drop the link to the translations API. which is also applicable to online store, which was what they were advising for this use case. With regards to the collection metafields or metafields and collections being released, it's definitely on the product roadmap. No confirmed date for that being released, but it's very much a priority for the coming quarters. And if there are, Imutu, if you have any follow up questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. But I'll move on to a question here from Vladimir. He's asking, do some technical features, for example, a product or a cart preview or a quick add to cart feature, how do these affect the sales of a theme? Is it necessary to add these features for the first release of the theme?
I can take this
Maybe
one.
Mark. Oh, Vince. Yep. If you want to
Yeah,
hop
Marcus
on.
will probably elaborate on it. But yeah, so I would say, a product or cart preview and a quick add to cart are quite small features. And I think, what will drive sales, that the overall UX design of your theme, as well as your demo stores, I think those are much higher drivers of sales of your theme. And I think that it really depends if you think that you need to have these in before or after on your first mission or later. We hope that partners are mapping out the purchase flow of their theme and making sure that if these things are, features that would be complementary to the theme and help the purchase flow for the merchant's customer, then I would definitely consider adding them. But again, maybe not, and maybe it is something you can build in over time. Now, so is it necessary to? Yeah. So for your first release, what we like to say too is, if you have if you're trying to do some unique sections and features built into your theme, and if that's holding you up from getting through the basic technical bit, I would say shelve those for now, and then those are ones that you can build on over time and update your theme. And then from there, you can up your theme's price over time. So we are not getting into theme pricing here, but picking a theme price that you can kind of grow over time based off the amount of work and features you build in is something to consider. Personally, I would look at it also in a merchant lens and say, if I was a merchant, would I want these features? Would it make it easier for a customer to check out and go through the purchase flow and make a sale? And I think, making those decisions ahead of time for the merchant based off your purchase flow that you've mapped out ahead of time, we'll let you make the call on that. But personally, I think anything to make it easier to go through the purchase flow is always a benefit for merchants.
Yeah, just to double down and expand a bit there as well. I mean, it's one thing that we experienced many years ago before we closed the theme store for submissions, is we noticed a trend that any of the submissions that were coming in just read more like a feature list rather than a theme. And a list of features is not a theme. It's the whole idea that your research, your planning, your idea, your focus, your vertical will make those decisions for you. Is this relevant to this particular focus of the theme? So there is no point in literally letting those smaller items drive you forward. In terms of affecting the sales of a theme, it's down to how it's implemented. Is it good UX? Is it bad UX? With a quick to add cart might sound great, but if it's really janky and it's poor UX and it's not working well, then it's more likely that it's going to hinder the buyer, the conversion, and then obviously the sales of the theme. But if it's dealt with in a really good way, it could be something that does embellish the theme and attracts merchants towards using it. But I don't think merchants will be sold on a single feature or particular feature alone, but more to do with their setup, the aesthetics, and the overall product flow, as Vincent mentioned there earlier.
Cool. Yeah, really, really great points. Definitely, I think it's really about as both of you mentioned, thinking about the merchant flow. And I think it's also not just designing the feature as it appears for the buyer, but also the feature as it will be interacted by the merchant too. There's
100%.
slightly a connected question again from Vladimir next. He asks, what are the most recommended technical features for a best-selling theme? I might just start off and maybe throw it over to Ryan for the sort of the review perspective.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and
So,
I,
so
I,
go ahead.
I think again maybe not the answer that Vladimir you're looking for, but I think if I had to, give my best recommendations for the features for best selling theme, I would probably start with our mandatory features in the requirements, and I would focus on just getting those perfect. Even thinking about how you can take those features and personalize or customize them for the specific vertical that you want to design for. Um, and then sometimes the features that you think are going to be very successful are not the ones that merchants will use. So instead of making you have like redundant work, I would recommend see what the response is like when you launch your theme in the store. See what the feature requests are then, and then you can iterate based on feedback that you're getting. Um, so yeah, in a roundabout way, you really nail those mandatory features, because I think some of the best selling themes in the theme store, they do something very creative with mandatory features. So, and Ryan, I might just throw it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. I personally feel that the mandatory features, or any feature that supports a platform side element, is absolutely at the forefront of what makes a good technical theme. It is also possible to implement those features and have them kind of stand out, kind of as a sore thumb if they're not implemented correctly and they're not integrated properly into the aesthetic of the theme. Aside from that, I think that the most important feature, if I were to narrow it down, would be one that makes sense for the identity of the theme as a whole, and not one that, like Marcus mentioned in the previous question, just checks a box. I feel that most themes will have a readily identifiable merchant vertical that it's intended to appeal to. And so, if a feature that works into that perceived merchant vertical and makes sense for the identity of the theme is done, and done to a high level of quality, I think that is the best possible outcome for adding in a technical feature. So, for instance, in the case of a fashion focused theme, so something that's very fashion forward, very aesthetic forward, something like a size chart, if that can be done in an inventive way so it doesn't look like it's just been tacked on after the fact, it's a very crucial portion of what makes up a fashion forward theme. And so to have that done with style and to have it integrated in a way that makes sense and that lends to the aesthetic and doesn't detract from it, I think that's a very important focal point to kind of zero in on. And of course, there's a different example for every merchant vertical as you go along the list. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Just if I'll add one other little cherry on top of all of that as well, is it's even not like, I mean, there's obviously the technical features that are there, and as Liam said, it's how these are treated. Two themes could treat the exact same thing completely different. I mean, one could be like, very fast animations, could be really quick loading, very vibrant, in your face, brash sort of impact, whereas another could be soft and gentle and whatever. So look to the aesthetic as well. So it's all, you'll have your core mandatory features that you need to bring in, but see what you can do to make those a little bit unique, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel or come up with an entirely new technical section or feature or functionality. Maybe take what is there and see what you can manipulate with that first, and get those fundamentals right before maybe stepping off into more customized functionalities and features.
Absolutely, yeah, really, really good points there about just being very intentional about how to execute on features. Mandatory features can be really impactful. We have a question here from Anonymous. Um, Currently, the filtering on themes is limited to 1,000 products per collection. How can we deal with this? Should we tell them or tell the merchants to limit collection size to within 1,000 products? So, um, you know, I can speak a little bit to this. I think with Online Store 2.0, there were a lot of limits introduced around block numbers, section numbers, around template numbers, and around filters as well. So, the real intent of these limitations were just to ensure that merchants have performant themes. And actually, we've actually changed the template limit as well after reviewing its performance impact of increasing that. So that is actually, I believe it's increased to from 50 per page type. I believe it's 100 or more. Maybe
Uh,
I believe it's higher, maybe higher.
think
I'll leave a note about that in our Team Accelerator Slack channel. But for the 1,000 products per collection, um, there's definitely stores out there that have those huge inventories, and I think this is just a way to maybe look at how to manage those in a little bit way that's much more is more performant when you're trying to filter. If you're filtering collections that have so many products, it can be very, very challenging. Um, but from building a theme perspective for the theme store, that's not a huge issue. I don't think when it might be when you're working with clients, but from a theme store perspective, um, you know as long as you're meeting the requirements that your filters are actually set up correctly, that's all we're asking for, really. There may be cases when you're working with clients that you may have to look at workarounds. Um, but I think a collection with over 1,000 products, like, is that really a collection as well at that stage? Like, you will start to come into just user issues, UI, experiences just being broken as well with those big collections. Um, so yeah, that's uh, maybe not a perfect answer to that question, but if anyone else wants to hop on and give some feedback to that, or not.
I think you pretty summed it up well there. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it is the case of going. I mean, when a merchant's asking about a large collection with like in excess of 1,000 products and whatever, I mean that's very much a platform concern, should be directed towards like the thing. But from a theme perspective, you're going, okay, well, I'm looking at how am I going to present a huge amount of products and in collections, in collection lists, and so on and so forth. So it's more about thinking like, how do I deal with a large catalog? What do I do in
Yeah.
terms of design, layout, filtering, etc., etc. So that's where I would think more so. Yeah, limitations like that merchant requests for
Yeah,
the platform.
we do, like the change to templates limitation. We do evaluate these limitations periodically. We are definitely open to change, so do keep an eye on the change log for issue updates to these limitations. And maybe just thinking about this in another way as well. Marcus or Vince, would you have any recommendations of examples of themes to look at that do big collections very well on the theme store already?
Empire, Warehouse, Expanse, there'd be three of
Hmm.
the most popular large catalog ones. That those are the just ones that just come top to mind there.
Okay,
Just as I was thinking.
perfect. So maybe check those out on the theme store for ideas of those kind of large collections, and how those can be dealt with. So Mutu has another great question here again. And I'll throw this over to Ryan. Can you briefly describe the design and UX review process? And then I guess like tapped onto that, should we include RTL functionality by default? So kind of a double barrel question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, keyword briefly. I'll try my best. So, I just want to preface this answer just with kind of a little background from our review team and our experience. So, our review team is composed of 4 people with varying proficiencies, whether that be like a computer science background, design UX background. I myself coming from a design UX background. Also, each member of the team has a multi-year tenure with theme support. So the frame of reference we've been able to develop over that time is pretty invaluable. It's not really something that can be taught. It's just kind of like a matter of time. And so, with that said, once the technical part of the review process, which is the first part, has been seen through to satisfaction, so that's all of your binary technical requirements, all of your mandatory feature set, performance scores, etc. You would move on to a more qualitative stage in the review process, which is the design, UX, and breaking review. So design, to touch on that first and foremost, obviously design is a very subjective thing. And so we try to draw objectivity through a number of varying perspectives. And so we'll bring in our whole team and kind of swarm any given submission so that it has a number of different viewpoints on it, including the viewpoint of the partner team that has submitted the actual theme submission. The reason for this is because, with emerging design sensibilities such as anti-design and brutalist approaches and other types of non-conventional design approaches that we see in themes in their current state, I feel that these avenues should absolutely be explored with as much objectivity as possible, and has actually manifested itself in some of the most interesting and kind of crowd-pleasing themes that we've seen so far. And so, as far as design is concerned, we try not to police that as much as we can. We try to be as open-minded as possible and kind of keep the negotiation open with the partner to find where the design meets function. Obviously, there's universal principles of design that kind of go without saying, and so we will lean heavily on elements of design that we feel can be improved on. But of course, the conversation is always open. As far as UX is concerned, this is a little bit more concrete in the way that that themes are intended to work. So UX, we are looking for a certain sense of parity across the themes in our offering. So if themes are customarily treating specific features with an approach, whether that be like whether they use a slider for particular settings or whether that serves best as a drop down, we try to draw parity across what's already existing within the offering, and then we will suggest heavily on that basis. There's also, kind of harkening back to that frame of reference with theme support that I was mentioning earlier. We do have a very finely tuned relationship with merchant pain points, having worked many, many years in theme support. So if there's something that we kind of see as a usual suspect in terms of a merchant UX pain point, we will lean very heavily on that as well. And so as far as the process is concerned, it's a negotiation, for the lack of a better term. So we will come in with our opinions, you will counter us with your opinions, and we will find the way to kind of draw the difference between the two and make it work so that merchants are the ones that benefit at the end of the day. As far as our breaking review, which is the part that comes after the design UX review, this is where we push everything to edge case. So we will, try to break that thing no matter what it takes. So we will, push things to user cases that probably won't exist as commonplace out in the wild, just to see if we can surface bugs, just to see if we can find those nitty gritty kind of situations where if tightening the bolts a little bit will prevent those instances from occurring and manifesting themselves in the form of support debt, for instance, and also, potentially negative reviews. So I guess the whole situation I just explained, albeit not brief, kind of rolls back into the idea that we're trying to make sure that prospective theme partners are as successful as possible when they hit the theme store, and that we discover these issues during the review process and not after the fact. And so I'll just leave it at that for now. Of course, our team is available to anybody who has questions about our review process. As we move into the new year, we would also like to make ourselves more readily available to answer these questions in real time if necessary. And not necessarily the briefest answer, but a full answer, hopefully. And as
One
far
thing
as,
that
sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say one thing that was very interesting that you're talking about was the consistency of how settings appear in the theme editor UI. And just how that's important so that merchants get a familiarity of and they start to expect certain patterns to repeat, whether it's a slider or a drop down for the same types of settings. um, is there anything else you can add in of advice on how to um, to set up settings essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dawn is being offered as an example, not just for the technical basis, but for things like how we handle specific user interface elements. So I would say if you're kind of scratching your head wondering how a specific feature might be handled, I would definitely draw on Dawn as an example. Um, Obviously, other themes that are in our current offering, there's parity across those as well. So seeing and using those as an example, without going too far with that, is definitely a way to go about answering those questions. And of course, the team itself, we're definitely a resource to tap into, as well as Liam's team and the theme partnerships team. So that being said, user interface and parity across themes also includes the way that wording is used to describe specific features. We avoid things like disclaimers being included in the user interface. Of course, these are things that we'll comment on during the review process as well. But then also, just to kind of then segue into that second part of the double barrel question with RTL, we are definitely moving towards a more internationalized model, just Shopify as a whole, through the introduction of various initiatives. As far as RTL is concerned, I definitely see, Arabic and Hebrew merchants as requiring this feature, and hopefully in a way that's done correctly and technically sound. That being said, is it something that's absolutely required, or is it something that we're looking for as a hard feature when it comes to submissions that are coming in early 2022? My answer to that is probably no. And the reason why is just because, as it stands right now, checkout.liquid is a feature that is currently available to Plus merchants as it stands right now. And to have a theme that is intrinsically RTL, then kind of turn back to LTR as it moves to the checkout phase is perhaps probably a jarring experience for merchants, or sorry, for customers who are participating in that purchase flow. And so at the most crucial part of that purchase flow, which is the checkout, that kind of becomes where that instance kind of resides. And so I'll leave it at that for now, but it's definitely something that we're investigating both on the theme side of things and just as Shopify, wholesale in terms of the platform. But yeah, that's where I'll leave it for now. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. That's a lot of great context to get, and I'm sure our viewers here, really value that.
Just,
Um,
just
I have a
something as well.
oh,
Could I
yeah,
just jump in
sure.
there as well, Liam? Just in
We're
terms of the UX, as Ryan was saying, I mean, going through and making sure that there's obviously the consistency throughout the settings themselves. But if you're looking at your settings in your theme and you feel that like, okay, the merchant is repeating an awful lot of these patterns, perhaps some of those settings should be moved into a global setting, and then you're taking a bit more of the cognitive load and the setup fatigue off the merchant by setting it as a one-time option that can then be drawn down into other sections from there. Just another thing to be thinking of.
Yeah, I have a quick comment on that as well. That's a great point, Marcus. That's like the idea of setup fatigue is something that I think maybe gets lost in the development process, just because when you're working on something so hard and putting a lot of care and effort into something, it's kind of difficult to remove yourself from that frame of reference. And so that's something that we're hoping to offer as part of the review process, as well as just kind of this fresh eyes perspective, and also roll in that kind of merchant focused frame of reference as well, just through years of theme support, to do exactly what Marcus just mentioned, make recommendations that are meaningful to help better curb the user experience. And so, for an instance, I think the best possible example is what Marcus just mentioned, where section and block level settings can be rolled into something that's universal and then applied to sections after the fact. I think color scheming and things along those lines are probably a classic example of that. And I won't go too much further, but just to kind of elaborate on Marcus's point there.
perfect. Thanks so much, guys. I have a question here, another one from Anonymous. Will you guys continue to accept theme submissions after the Theme Accelerator program ends this year? So the Theme Accelerator program is completely independent of really the theme review process. There's no, we've no deadline on when someone needs to submit a theme. The theme store is open. But just speaking to the Theme Accelerator program, yes, that is ending at the end of the year, but we'll actually be, very early on in 2022, we are going to be running more accelerator programs, and we'll also still continue to keep in touch and to support the cohort, the group that has been participating in this first accelerator program. There's no, you won't be, losing out on any chance of being able to submit a theme. So another question here from Anonymous is,
They ask the
how
toughest questions, don't they?
I
Whoever
know,
wants.
I know. Thank you, Anonymous, for the tough
Yeah.
questions. Anonymous is asking, how are themes on the theme store front page chosen? Does every single theme get to be featured, or are there certain conditions? And if so, what are those?
Yeah, that's easy. Basically, I send every partner my PayPal account, and they make contribution. No, I'm only messing. No, it's not a case like that at all. The theme store presentation depends on. We have certain collections and filters that can either be manually created internally based on, let's say, particular features that we want to ensure are being presented front and center to merchants, but also say the homepage slider that's on an automated rotation basis that randomly selects different themes over the course of various periods. In any of the other areas, we're working hard to improve the filtering, the curation, and the presentation of themes to merchants, because one of the biggest things is this theme discovery, how to match a merchant with the correct theme for them. So we're definitely aiming towards like verticals, industries, catalog size, things that are front and center to the merchant when they're coming to the theme store looking for something that's going to be significant to their particular needs and their business needs. So yeah, that is something that's been developed over time. There is stuff there like trending now, and that is obviously down to popularity of installs and purchases. But yeah, that is very much going to be changing over time. Yeah, a lot of it is going to be aiming towards industry and collection and catalog size in the presentation.
Just quickly to add to that as well. So you have this like the slider. So right when you open the theme store, there's the big slider. That's actually at random. So it just randomly circulates and chooses themes over time. So that specific slider itself is at random. But like Marcus said, a lot of the other ones are manually added into the certain collections and features.
I think if a few people have been asking for Marcus's PayPal
No problem. I'll post that up
in the
very
chat
shortly.
as well. We've two questions here related to version updating. Victor and Anonymous. So Victor is asking, do merchants get automatic updates when a theme is released and for future releases? And adding on to that, what's the best frequency for theme version updates? So first off, do merchants get automatic updates when a new version of the theme is released?
I can weigh in on that.
Yeah.
So when a new version is released, it really depends on what that version entails. So in the case where a version is removing or altering a setting, that essentially takes the theme off the upgrade path. And so if it's at risk of causing a break in a setting or any other potential damage to a merchant's existing theme, we opt not to roll that out to the merchant population at large that is currently using said theme. And so in the instance where it's something like a crucial bug fix, if it's something that doesn't touch settings whatsoever, then in that case that would be rolled out to something that we refer to as a mass upgrade. And so it's really a matter of what, and a matter of whether or not you've isolated specific elements of what your upgrade is entailing. So in the instance where you do have a feature that is going to be added to a theme or something that's going to affect the settings in some way, I would recommend isolating those away from something that would be considered something that merchants can use or make immediate use of, like a bug fix. And so it's a matter of version control in a number of ways. There are also other elements that take merchants off the upgrade path. I won't delve too deeply into that, but there are also initiatives that we're currently working on to make sure that as many merchants remain on the upgrade path as possible. And so those will be coming in the near future. And this should hopefully help the way that merchants make use of inventive and also just kind of reactive based updates that partners push out. So, Marcus, did you want to elaborate? I see you.
Absolutely. No, totally on board exactly with that. I mean, it is the case that And I think there is a question coming up as well, just in terms of frequency of what's the best frequency of
Mhm.
updates. So it might be a good time to just roll that in with it as well.
Yeah.
There's no set frequency. Some theme partners tend to do massive sprints where they bundle an awful lot of items in at once, and then they'll submit it all together. Some might separate design and in-house decisions on updates around their theme from, say, mandatory features and updates from bug fixes and send them through independently. How frequent? As frequent as you need when it's when it's really there. But what I would say is also think of the urgency of it. Is this something that's vitally urgent? Is it breaking a merchant's store, or is it something that is preventing a customer from checkout? If not, is it something that you can roll into a larger update with a few other items and send them through? Some of it's going to depend on your bandwidth, your developer team, your resources, whatever. And other items are just going to be sort of in-house decisions of when to send through. We're there to accept them. I'd say, obviously don't be sending through every single day, or Ryan will just lose his mind altogether. But just like, if they're urgent and they need to come through, send them through, and then just make the decision of whether you're going to be sending bug fixes and design updates, or mandatory features all in together or separately.
Yeah, just to comment on that further, can you can you lose what's already lost, Marcus? That's what I'm asking you. But also, as far as our team is concerned, we jump on updates pretty quickly. Like, we would try to get on them as quickly as possible. There is an option as you're submitting an update in the admin, or sorry, the theme dashboard, to mark it as urgent. We reserve that for things that are absolutely urgent. So that being said, like Marcus mentioned, try to gauge whether or not this is something that's considered crucial, or if this is something that can wait until your next version is considered, and roll those together. If it's something like a hot fix, we will act relatively quickly to get that thing out as soon as possible, so that merchants can make use of that, especially if it's something that affects the purchase flow. That's pretty much what urgent updates are reserved for. So if it's something that's affecting a merchant's ability to hit the landing page and then make their way through to checkout, then that's something that we would consider crucial, and that should be pushed right away.
Perfect. Please, don't mark everything as urgent, as Ryan said, and don't abuse the power. Another question here from Dominic. He's asking, when we submit the theme in the partner dashboard, do we need to have the documentation and the demo stores ready? So maybe, Ryan, again, draw on your expertise in the review process here.
Absolutely. So demo stores, they provide their own subset of challenges. The biggest one is typically sourcing imagery. And so in the case where you are submitting your theme for the first time, we would like to see one demo, like a fully fleshed out demo, images and everything included. If you're intent on having multiple presets that include their own demos, respectively, then you can work on those as we go through the review process. We review the zip file that you submit, and we add our own content to it to do things like, for instance, the breaking review, push it to edge case. It's using non-idealized materials to do so. And we also have a number of test environments in place that provide their own collateral so that we can test the theme effectively. But for the sake of seeing what your overall concept is, and as just generally proof of concept, as well as the intended merchant vertical focus, one demo shop, at least by the time of submission, is required.
And related just to documentation, is documentation is required too?
Like, you're asking me if documentation is
Yeah.
required? Yeah, so documentation is, again, something that can be iterated on as we go through the review process. For instance, if your specific focus for your theme build includes a very niche type of technical feature, perhaps through the review process, we're able to refine that further by providing, again, that fresh eyes perspective. We can shed light on things that maybe the development team wasn't cognizant of as they were developing said feature. And through that, through the feedback loops, I think that documentation is something that can kind of always be refined. We would like to see some example of documentation, of course. But again, it doesn't need to be absolutely 100% set in stone and completed by the time of your submission.
That's really good to know. And Ryan, you started off that the answer as well, saying that demo stores were one of the biggest challenges, and something you know maybe a lot of developers would not actually anticipate, just gathering all of those visual assets. But from your experience, what have been some of the other struggles that submissions have had that you've seen so far?
Just relating to demo shops or
Just
anything?
in general.
The biggest challenge I've found, kind of that encompasses all submissions we've seen so far is just the degree of QA that's been taken into account. QA is not easy. Our team is still perfecting the way that we conduct QA. What we're hoping to do is actually in the new year provide some of our resources that we've honed over numerous months of seeing submissions and also just spitballing between the team. We've spent hours and hours and hours in sessions refining our breaking checklists and other methodologies that we use in the review process. And so what we're hoping to do is make that available to prospective partners as well to kind of help quell that idea of quality assurance, because quality assurance is kind of a subjective thing. There's really no one way to slice it, and it also really depends on the submission itself and the technical features that a submission includes. And so, what we're hoping to do is provide some semblance of objectivity in the way that we provide QA, and to help trickle that down to the partners that are vying to put in a submission in the new year.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Thanks, Ryan.
Hey, Liam.
You're not off the hook yet, though. There's another question that's just come in related to review, or well, to the approval post review. When you fix a theme feature, does it go through an approval process with Shopify? So I'm assuming that's after, that's post launch, and I think really here just curious about like how quickly changes that are, or how quickly when something's fixed, is it visible, or is it available on the theme store?
So I'm just going to see if I can elaborate on that. So this is like, for instance, if you've published your theme, it's available on the Shopify Theme Store, and then now you have some type of fix or feature that you want to add in that's perhaps additional to what the initial submission entailed.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that really depends on the feature in a lot of ways. Like if it's something extremely robust that has a lot of moving parts and something that requires deeper understanding in QA, then we will take our time with it to make sure that we offer you the feedback necessary to make it something that's successful before it lands in the hands of the merchants. And so that's really what it boils down to in terms of our prerogative, is to make sure that you're as successful as possible so that the findings don't happen on behalf of the merchant. We want to be able to apply as many use cases as we can to make sure that we can surface bugs or break the feature before it actually ends up in the merchant's hands. So that being said, if it's something minor, if it's something like a bug fix that you've discovered either through a merchant reporting it, or if it's your own QA practices that have surfaced this, if we can quickly go through that, find that the fix is adequate, then we'll publish that. Pretty much, like I don't want to overpromise or anything like that, but it's usually pretty much same day. And so if it's something that involves a little bit more care and understanding on our part, then perhaps that'll trickle into a multi-day event. But that's pretty much where we stand right now.
Perfect. Vince, I think you had something to add there, or to
definitely just throughout this conversation, and I was thinking, what other questions could be, answers to these questions could be helpful for this audience. And Ryan, I have a question for you. So where are we seeing partners struggle most with the review process? Maybe you can touch on maybe some of the finer points of where you're seeing people struggle and maybe things they're missing. And then beyond that, if you could provide any tips for having like a first successful review, and beyond, touch on YOLO shipping, etc.
YOLO shipping. So Just a short answer to that is the biggest difficulty that I've found that submissions are running into is with the technical requirements, first and foremost. The submissions have been, moving the needle in a lot of positive ways, and I think that's just a matter of having had time to unpack and digest the technical requirements, and perhaps have a few feedback loops with the review team to kind of see what our feedback is, and to integrate that feedback into the next iteration of the theme submission. And so um, there have been a lot of positive movements on that front, and I think that that's something that's going to naturally increasingly become mitigated as we just spend more time with these requirements. The biggest one that comes to mind in terms of the technical requirements themselves are the mandatory features. So some mandatory features are very simple implementations. So some include just adding a snippet of code in a particular template. Others are much more finicky, for the lack of a better term. So for instance, a product media is the one that comes to mind. Product media can be a little bit adversarial in the way that it behaves with mobile devices, especially. And so, to make sure that those are QA'd to a level that doesn't provide pain points for merchants moving forward, and it's understandable that a lot of merchants may not even opt to use these particular features. Um, it is important to have those essentially nailed before we move you on to the next version, or the next stage of the review process. And so it may come across to prospective theme partners that we're being a little heavy-handed when it comes to the technical requirements, but again, it all kind of boils down to how successful you'll be once your product hits the theme store. It's all out of a high level of care from my perspective, and so if we are being a little bit tough on you on that regard, it's from that sentiment for the most part. And other than that, to help make your experience a lot more seamless and less frictiony, just work with us. There's no rush to publish a product in the theme store, nor is it an obligation of Shopify to publish a submission if it lands in the review queue. So we will work with you as hard as we can to get a product from start to finish, finish being a publishable, viable product. We will, however, put the kibosh on a project if it is starting to spin its wheels a little bit. To touch on what Vince mentioned in terms of YOLO shipping, that's actually a colloquial term that we've coined in-house. YOLO shipping is if we offer you a large list of feedback, we expect you to unpack, digest, and fix every item on that gist. We don't expect you to hit on the first two and then resubmit it to us. That's where YOLO shipping comes in. It actually slows your process down. It makes us kind of look at the situation and be like, maybe they're not completely serious about this. We don't weigh in on topics because we feel that they're superfluous. We feel that every single bit of feedback that we give you is with the idea that it'll help you create a better product at the end of the day. And so that's where I'll draw the line there.
That's great.
Marcus.
Thanks, Ryan. Lots of good feedback there.
Just on that as well. I mean, case in point with this particular topic, I had a recent sync up with one of the partners that is actually pretty advanced in the review process, and we had a long conversation around this because they had they're getting their feedback. They have worked with hundreds of Shopify clients at an expert and plus level, and they felt, in his own words, saying that they knew everything when they were coming in, and that this has opened their eyes to how much they didn't know, and that they really appreciated this whole review process because it's opened their eyes to how they have been building specifically for individual client merchants who might needed just a few of the mandatory features or a particular set or organized components in one particular way. But building a theme for the many with everything integrated and working was something completely new to them. And they've literally, I'm not going to say stumbled, but they've really helped improve their theme from the beginning of the review process to the point they're at now. So it is down to literally making sure that you're dotting those I's and crossing those T's when it comes to the mandatory features and the technical requirements in QA.
Great.
Absolutely.
And just to wrap it up, we're actively monitoring, where there are bottlenecks and where partners are struggling to get through certain areas. And we're going to be looking in the new year of rolling out, more blogs, more articles, enhanced documentation to address some of these potential bottlenecks that we're seeing that are recurring. So we're obviously very open to any feedback by yourselves as well during the review process. So thanks.
Cool. So we're almost coming up to time. Also, just want to remind everyone on the call here that this webinar is being recorded, and I'll be uploading this as soon as possible. You'll probably see tomorrow a link in the Theme Accelerator Slack channel that you can access and rewatch all of these answers,
It'll have my PayPal link as well, by the way.
and
Yeah.
with Marcus's PayPal link. There's two other questions here that we have left. We'll try and roll through these. One is around Dawn. Dawn, should we use Dawn as a starting point when we develop a theme? What factors to consider whether or not to use Dawn as a starting point? I might just quickly speak to this. It's actually something we covered. Quite in depth in one of the last webinars. Definitely, I think the previous webinar, if you go back and look at that. I think in short, Dawn is at its most useful, I think, as a reference point to see how individual components work with each other. And from speaking with other team developers, they've really benefited from being able to understand how components are designed to be performant, to be accessible. So that's how I would really recommend people use Dawn. Um, it can be used as a starting point, but if you are using Dawn as a starting point, um, you know the finishing point must be quite far away from the starting point. Um, and just to add on to that a little bit, what does that actually mean? The visual identity should be quite different to Dawn. It should not really be recognizable as Dawn, because you want to be providing merchants with something that has more value than a theme which is available for free in the theme store. If it's too close to Dawn, you're really not setting yourself up for success, and you're not going to be seeing many installs for your theme. You're going to be also unable to fix bugs if bugs are appearing, if you're unfamiliar with the code. So I would think about how you can leverage Dawn as a reference point, and if you are building on top of it, that the if it's a starting point, the finishing point must be very far away. I'm sure Ryan, you might want to add on to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you really nailed it, Liam. The biggest thing is that Dawn is intended to be a reference, like Liam mentioned. Submissions that we've been getting that have used Dawn have definitely moved the needle, but a lot of them have been readily identifiable at surface level as Dawn. And again, like Liam mentioned, it's all about value proposition. We don't want to see Dawn clones, for the lack of a better term. We would like to see something that is used Dawn to leverage, technical requirements. For instance, Dawn comes front loaded with all of the technical requirements met. We would also like you to make note of the change log through versions of Dawn. There are already specific bugs that have been surfaced, and we look for those. We look to see if a developer who's used Dawn as a base has gone in, made note of those bugs and their associated pull requests in GitHub, and have actually implemented the fix. All of those things are readily available and transparent. And then also, in the case of when you do submit something that is built on the Dawn framework, we look at it from an art direction perspective. Is it visually identifiable as Dawn? We look at it from a feature set perspective. Is there any attempt to make an elaboration on the default feature set? Is there added value in that respect as well? And then also we go in and we have internal tools that will tell us exactly what templates have been changed, what's been added that is absolutely new, what was existing but then has been changed in a meaningful way. These are all things that we look at. And so if you do submit something and you get what appears to be a canned response from our team, it's not intended to be impersonal in any way, but it is an indication that perhaps your submission has not moved far enough away from what is considered identifiably done to warrant its own unique identity, and to go back to the drawing board and perhaps take that feedback and elaborate on it further. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Perfect. With There's just one last question that I want to get through, and yeah, again, as well, if you look at the requirements, there is a uniqueness category that addresses as well what our expectations are when someone's using Dawn as a starting off point. So it reiterates that it needs to have a very different visual identity. So yeah, one last question here from anonymous. I guess it's around the types of data that can be captured when people when merchant and partners have themes on the theme store. They're wondering. It's anonymous. Is there a way to get the contact info of merchants who made a purchase on the theme? Um, I want to create a community, so I guess it's around building community. Maybe it's a forum, maybe it's Facebook groups for this
Yeah.
purpose. Marcus, you might be
Yeah,
able to.
I could speak to that. I mean, you have to be careful because there's a fine line between spamming people and also breaching the Shopify terms of PPA, the partner program agreement. You know what I mean? And also, whether merchants want to be part of this. When you do sell themes, you do see the store URL that purchase your themes, and the account owner will have received a purchase invoice of your theme. So should they come, you'll be able to match that up with the store to ensure that this is a valid purchase of your theme, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, there is a way to see which stores are using your theme, but I would advise caution in how you choose to delve into that information and what you use with it. Be respectful of anybody buying your theme. Reaching out and offering them, assistance, or reaching out to them if there's a particular update that's of massive value or something like that, so long as it's in the merchant's interest. But also, obviously, in terms of GDPR and privacy, make sure that they have the options to opt out of any type of email communications you have with them. So that'd be sort of how I'd wrap that up quickly.
I think the best type of community that you want to create or to join is actually going to be the theme partner community.
Well,
That's
there you
what I
have
would
it.
say.
Yeah.
Well, we're a couple of minutes over. I think there could be a few questions that are outstanding. We'll address those in the Theme Accelerator channel. But other than that, thanks so much to my the panel that was speaking with us today. Thanks so much for the questions. Some really great questions. It's really good to see that this group of people are thinking in terms of how to make the most of the opportunity of being on the theme store. What are the best practices to look out for, and essentially how you can improve the service that you're going to provide to merchants. As I mentioned, webinar has been recorded. I'll be posting the link in the Theme Accelerator channel. If you have other questions, you can feel free to message me directly in Slack or ask in the Theme Accelerator channel. That's really what we're here for. We want to be able to open up the dialogue between you as developers and us within Shopify to just break down any barriers, demystify this process for you, make it just generally easier for you to build and to submit your themes to the theme store. So as I mentioned, really looking forward to seeing the work that's going to be coming from this group of developers. And I firmly believe 2022 will be the year of themes. We can't wait to see your themes in the theme store. So,
Thanks, everyone.
from me, thanks, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Take care.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.